So the second question we have to discuss is this. TeX was designed to typeset pages, and now we want multiple outputs. Do we have to change anything? So one of the things that has to change is placement of figures, because we don't know where the figures are going to go if we're not typesetting them. That's just one example. But it's sort of, we're writing, but we don't know if we're writing for PDF or HTML. But these are abstract things. I'd like those people that know more about this than I do to talk about the practical implications of the shift from just pages to pages and other outputs, including accessible outputs such as HTML.
From a user's point of view, they're going to be looking at one of the outputs when they're doing it. Which one are they looking at, and will that cause them to act in different ways, to do unexpected things? Will it cause them to produce documents in certain ways which are unhelpful to other people? I'm not sure.
I think it would help if we had some examples of problems that have arisen in this sort of thing, or difficulties that have been avoided.
Well, in my case, I had to increase page size in order to guarantee that my illustrations would be in the place I thought they were the best, the most useful, which is typically near the text that refers to them. I don't actually, Stephen Wolfram wrote a book that had where he managed to get all the illustrations right next to where he was referring to them, so they didn't have to have figure numbers. I don't know what technology he used for that or how he managed it, but it's an interesting, it's a difficult problem to try and solve when illustrations sometimes want to be as large or even larger than the page that refers to them. In my case, an illustration is just an area of the page where I'm going to insert something interesting. In my case, which was a dynamic book, not based on PDF, I had the full power of my computer to do anything I wanted. So I have dynamic illustrations with user interfaces and sliders and independent zooming and so forth. But in order to do that, you have to sort of invert the world of, my program has a bunch of illustrations that use a TeX interpreter to surround themselves with typeset text and pages. So that was my solution. It's a general solution, but it's a private solution. It's not something that's going to work in the greater TeX community. With respect to, when we're talking about page numbers and so forth, one of the things that you can do is, instead of having page numbers, you can have a more finer numbering system where you have paragraph numbers. And in mathematical papers, mathematicians have gotten used to numbering everything so that they can find things in a sequence. They don't give, names to the theorems, they give numbers to them so that they can see that it's the third or the fifth theorem in an exposition. That's good. But it's really about giving something it's about tagging a piece of text with a permalink or a page number or a paragraph number or a name or whatever, so that it can be searched for. That's the real problem that's being solved. And if you have students and you want to tell them to go to someplace, it's easy to give them a page number for a static document or a PDF, but it could be more dynamic by saying, search for this, or give them something that's not necessarily a page number, but which is unique for its destination. That's the ultimate problem that the people need to solve. Page numbers are just an ancient hack.
I'd like to follow up on that, which is based upon my personal experience. At home, I have a 40-inch monitor, and it's a 4K monitor, which means it's like four of the normal monitors put together, and I can have three portrait pages side by side. There's lots and lots of space. It fills the visual field, or a large part of it. Now, when I'm reading something and I see a reference to equation 7, well, that's good, because I'll have a memory of the number 7 and being that particular equation. But until I've got that memory, if I'm looking in the middle at a page that has got equation 7 reference to it, on the edge of my vision, I'd actually like to see equation 7. If I've got a really big monitor, I want the central part of it to be the stuff I'm really interested in. And if that's really the thing I'm most interested in, I want the stuff on either side to be useful information relevant to the particular page I'm on. And if there's a reference to a theorem or a figure or an equation, I'd like to see that equation on one side of, on the periphery. And if I'm reading a piece of code and there are various functions being used, I may want to see the definitions or the information about those functions on the side of what I'm looking at. So it's a bit like the Amazon, bit like the online shopping, where you say, well, if you're interested in this, you might also be interested in that, except I want it to be done to my advantage. And so there we're looking at an entirely different sort of output, where the output document is not a sequence of sheets of paper with marks on them. It's more like a whole bunch of index cards, and I just look at 6 of them in a line, which is the page I'm reading, and on the outside are all sorts of other pieces of information. So it becomes much more like a sort of dashboard sort of thing.
Well, it's easy to solve that.
Controller. I'll stop now because Doug wants to talk.
It's easy to solve that problem when you have a giant screen in front of you. It's not so easy to solve that problem on a little tiny phone screen. I mean, it's user interfaces changed with the real estate available. And, I mean, in Tech Shop right now on the Mac, you can look at a PDF that it's created, and you can point to an internal link to a figure, figure 3, and it'll show you the caption of the figure, but it won't. It'll pop up a little pop-up showing you an other portion of the document, but it isn't necessarily what you wanted. It's a hard problem to solve, especially within tech, where it's not really designed at the bottom level of the interpreter to handle these kinds of things. It just sort of farms it out to the back end, which is in charge of creating the PDFs.
Can I ask about that? So I have very little context for the kind of depths of the central part of the processor. It was written a long time ago. It wasn't written for this modern world. From your view, Doug, how much of it would have to change to enable this kind of rendering of content to multiple different ways of displaying it from typesetting pages?
Well, I'm more familiar with my own tech interpreter than I am with the official one, but the official one is, it's geared towards creating pages with glyphs with characters on them, but it has the ability to be extended with embedded content that can be exported to what's called the back end, which originally it created what's called DVI files, which were sent out to Mercantile or typesetters or whatever. And then when there's a PDF backend, which is pretty complicated and which requires primitives added in. And so there's these other engines that are called PDF Tech or PDF LaTeX, and they're all compiled in. But the basic interpreter still operates on sending out information to the PDF, exporting it as text strings and so forth, and the back end has to convert that into things like intra-document links and colors and so forth. And so in theory, there could be one for HTML as well. I haven't heard about that. I know that there are sort of higher level translators that try to go from a markup level that LaTeX is at and into HTML. I'm not familiar with them, and my interpreter is designed to export in any number of formats because that I just thought that was a good way to design it. And I can export in DVI, I can export as pure binary, but I haven't actually implemented exporting it as PDF because it's really complicated and I'm just one guy, and my problem had to be solved by getting away from PDF. So that's where I'm at. Because I wanted the full power of a complete computer to be behind whatever I had in the illustrations in my document. But it's not a portable document. It's tied to a particular platform. So it's getting it to work on all different platforms is a big deal. I mean, one of the problems with my book is it's only on one platform. So it's tough to recommend it to a student who might have a device on a different platform. But on the other hand, having page numbers would make it easier. If I had it on that platform, then when a teacher talks about page number 12 and it's the same on all platforms, that's a good thing. So in any case, there's talk about embedding a lot of content in PDF, like movies and so forth, and we can consider a movie as a sort of vaguely, it's a data static, even though it's a dynamic, set of data. But there's been a holy grail of dynamic content in documents for a long time, and it's a holy grail. It's not going to be reached, and Mathematic, they tried to create a computational document format, but it's really a business proposition to license their technology and blah, blah, blah. And that didn't really take. And there's only so much you can embed in PDF, and it's gotten better. Searching in PDF has gotten better than it used to be. It's still not very good. That was another thing I had to solve in my own TeX interpreter. It actually supports searching the TeX data structures and does at least as good a job. I mean, in some areas it does a better job, and in some areas not as good a job as searching a PDF. But anyways, I mean, I'm just doing it because I think it's an interesting problem to try to solve. But I'm not sure that I'm ready for prime time.
I think it's important from time to time I'll use the phrase think outside the box, because TeX is all about boxes and glue and typesetting and putting things in boxes and boxes nested inside boxes. I certainly think that, TeX was Don Knuth's response to a problem he faced, which is the declining quality of print when photo typesetting was introduced, and he couldn't bear to see his books that he was writing look so bad when they used to look pretty good. And so he set out to solve that problem. I think that what's required now, an improvement in typesetting quality is welcome, of course, but I think in some sense more of a priority to improving typeset output quality is to improve the flexibility and range of outputs so that they work on mobile phones and 40-inch monitors and no monitor at all, which is the situation of a blind student, and in all sorts of other situations. So I think I'm going to write this as a question that needs to be continued. What the question was, TeX was designed to typeset pages a long time ago, and now we want multiple outputs. Do we have to change anything? Well, the answer to that is yes, but exactly what it is, and persuading people that their part will have to change rather than somebody else's part having to change or users having to change is a difficult matter. Now, we did have a third question, but I'm going to leave that as the cliffhanger for the next episode. So the third question, which is quite an important one, and it's related a lot to the use that tech authors make of tech macros, which are very convenient, I have to say. I use them a lot myself. But the question is, how do we get from here to there as a community? So I'm going to say goodbye to all our listeners, if we have any. And all the other people here can say goodbye if they want to. And then we are at the end of our tech hour.
Well, thank you, Jonathan, for putting this together.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
I'm grateful for everybody that's contributed. And happy teching, good luck.
Thank you for all of your complaints. I like listening to them because they make me think about how they could be solved, if solvable.